everybody, to the First Name Basis podcast. I'm your host, Sheetal Jaitly, CEO of TribalScale. We've been in a little bit of a hiatus for now doing this podcast, but I'm glad to be back here in 2022, kicking it off with a good friend of mine, Derrick Fung, who is the CEO of Drop Loyalty. Derrick, welcome to the pod, man.
Hey, Sheetal. Good to be on. I'm number one of this year.
Yeah, this is number one this year. I took some time off actually from the pod, just in the past 2.5 months. So it's good to be back and getting in the swing of things.
Well, I'm honored to be your first guest this year.
Well, first, before we kick off, Derrick, I love bringing people on the pod who I know really well, and so I would love for you to give a little background on yourself and introduce our listeners to who you are and what you're doing.
Great. Derrick Fung, one of the founders of Drop. We've actually renamed the company now, so it's Drop Technologies. We're still doing the same thing, but it's more encompassing of.
Did you get a better multiple? Did you get a better multiple?
I think loyalty. It's really evolved. I mean, I think it speaks to our world and our space. We started the company about 5 years ago, and I remember early days. Investors, every time the word loyalty was used, they'd kind of quickly jump to think, immediately to, oh, I've seen loyalty. Oh yeah, there's all these companies that, we invest in, and some of them didn't work. And so we said to ourselves, yeah, technically what we're doing is driving loyalty, but ultimately if we're doing it right, the loyalty should actually be to us first. The consumer should be opening up the Drop app, discovering offers, discovering brands, shopping through Drop, earning points, redeeming. And the other challenge was when we went to pitch retailers and brands, the loyalty budgets are often smaller than the broader marketing budget. And so that's actually why we changed the name. And so I guess our multiple was better. But the reason wasn't for that. I guess it was just an outcome of some of these things.
I mean, you just said something. Messaging is important, right? You don't want to really target yourself into this one little bucket when you're like, wait a second, I bring a lot of value out here that's more than just what loyalty is. And sometimes us as entrepreneurs, we get stuck in our own head and thinking that other people are understanding what our value prop is going to be, and we're not able to go and demonstrate it the right way effectively because our own messaging is effed up. I see founders and companies do this all the time, right?
Yeah. I think storytelling. And I think honestly revisiting that story, probably not every day, but every time you raise a round and every time the company goes through a major transformation or the industry, just being open to evolving the story.
Right. So you and I started the companies around a very, very similar time. I remember when you were out raising, and I was just starting TribalScale, trying to figure out what we're going to do too. A lot has happened since then. Where are you at now? What's the size of the company?
We even threw a boat party, remember, in Toronto together.
Yeah,
a long time ago. Time flies. So we're 120 people now, on plan to probably double that over the next 15, 18 months or so. We're now fully hybrid. And so COVID, for us, it was an interesting one, but we're actually, growing very nicely. Hybrid, have employees now across mainly North America.
So what do you mean by hybrid? I mean, this is something I'm struggling with, and I love talking to other founders about. I was always the in the office guy. I feed off other people's energy. Love being in the office. Now we're fully remote at TribalScale for now. But what does a hybrid workplace mean for Drop?
Yeah, I'd say I was very similar to you, and I think throughout COVID, I swung back and forth around, what's really important for our employees and what does the world look like. And I think the answer is still we don't fully know yet, but the things we truly, truly believe in are, one, the importance of collaboration. And for Drop, our vision is around, personalized rewards. And so we ran surveys and also relied on some gut. And so some of the truths that we believe in around, the Drop hybrid model is that, one, we will always have physical location for employees to work at. And for now, it's actually reworks. And so you can, go to any.
So you got rid of that amazing space you had in Toronto.
For now.
Right.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
when we got rid of our office in Toronto, it was kind of, I took it a little personally. It's like, here we are, both of us. We started this thing 5 years ago. That office meant something. Like, it was a thing of pride, right? You got to like swallow that. Kind of doesn't make sense anymore. But yeah, okay. So you guys are leveraging reworks now. Okay.
For now, because we also believe in the fact that, end of this year, who knows, people might swing back the other way and say, we're dying to go back to an office, and make the norm the office. But we have moved all day-to-day communications online. But we highly encourage all cross-functional meetings in which alignment and collaboration and all that is integral, especially strategic planning and things where just being in person will accelerate the process. Instead of having like 10 Zoom calls, just 1 hour in person could accelerate that. Is also something that we're leveraging internally as well. So that's kind of what hybrid means for us. We have main hubs now, Toronto, New York. We haven't yet decided on the West Coast, which cities will be the hubs, but within each hub, WeWork spaces, even outside of hubs, you can use WeWork, but those are the hubs in which, if you're there, you can go into like a central office where we'll have multiple employees, and that's like the default WeWork in that.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of been us.
That's interesting, man. That's interesting. And so, one thing I noticed, me being here and moved to Florida, but one of the things I noticed was this huge thing Drop's doing with the Orlando Magic, man. And I was like, whoa, this is like Derrick took over the whole stadium. What's you talk to me a little bit about that? And like, I want you to not only talk about the cool factor of like, hey, here's this awesome startup that came out of Toronto and is now working with, an NBA team or sponsoring an NBA team. But really, I think one of the topics I wanted to chat with you on this pod about was like, what brought you to that market? Why your consumers being there, who they are, and I'll talk a little bit about that journey. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's been interesting to watch all the major sponsorships. It feels like, most teams now, it's like either you're sponsored by a crypto company, a rewards company, or like a fintech company. I'd say, and I think this applies to all of the companies within the categories I just mentioned. I think it's all about building consumer trust. I think for a consumer to really want to trust you, especially with their money, it's not as simple as just running a Facebook ad or just an influencer campaign. They have to see, research shows that the consumer has to see your brand multiple times. And often if they see the brand in a, high value, often not cheap to market on medium like in sports, major sports arena or in a billboard, that trust accelerates even quicker. And so for us, that was a big part of it. We got to the point where, hey, we have a really good understanding of our target consumers, of our power users, and believe it or not, we found a lot of that in NBA sports teams, and in particular for home markets like New York, but not Manhattan. It's Brooklyn, it's the boroughs, and then it's actually Florida. So part of it was us reaching that demographic, and the NBA teams, of course, pitched and showed data on, hey, people who engage with the NBA, it could be the main consumer or the significant other. We are skewed female. They actually are skewed more likelihood to enjoy shopping and like rewards. And so I think it was like sort of a mishmash of all these things. And of course, last year, I think, any consumer tech founder watching this will know that Facebook changed their algorithms, and it just became very expensive to market on other platforms. And so that it's like all those things happening that made it, make a lot of sense for us. And we think
so you actually took some budget. You took some budget from like what you were traditionally doing because of the algorithm change. You said, hey, like this data is telling us that our best users are going to be in these two markets and love basketball.
Yep. And we, the way we did it also mattered a lot. Through codes and through tracking, we're able to follow that consumer along all the way to, knowing whether they did an action within the app that we want them to do versus just an eyeball. And so whether that's, QR codes or promo codes, that's also very important in, out of home marketing. So yeah, those are, and I think the other big one is it's the comeback year. I call it the comeback year. Sports, live entertainment. People are going to want to be out there, and this was our way of making sure that we're grasping their attention when they're out there.
Well, how did crypto come into this then? So like we're talking about your users, like where did the intersection of crypto come where you're like, hey, you know what? Like they're going to be really excited about crypto.
Yeah.
First, I guess first explain what you guys are even doing in crypto.
Yeah. So through the Drop app, you can shop like you normally do at your favorite brands, mainly on mobile, and earn drop points. You can redeem points for gift cards, and now for crypto, and very soon for some other very interesting things, which I can't reveal too much yet, but I'm sure you can get a sense of after I kind of maybe take, everyone through the thinking. But people think about Drop in a very different way than they think about cashback. Cashback couponing, it's very much more, I'm going to get this check mailed to me or this money deposited into my PayPal, and it's like I bucket it into like savings. Versus with Drop, because we have points and because we've always used gift cards and because of just how the UX of the product and the consumer base we're going after, consumers always view Drop points as more of like, whether you call it play money or it's like house money, it's like bonus.
Sure.
It's money that I wouldn't have had if it, but I'm going to spend it like it's a bonus, versus like money I'm really trying to save. And it's the nature of our consumer as well. I'd say that I've been personally following crypto since probably 2014. Was at the Bitcoin conference just happened in Miami in 2014, and was following it, and I was like, okay, don't see why a consumer would really want to make that bet on their money on something that could go up and down. But then I think I had a big aha moment where the thinking started evolving to become, hey, that probably though isn't really our job. Like if the consumers really want to redeem for crypto and they're okay with it going up and down, then that's fine. I think the biggest the biggest kind of then next obstacle was education. It was, okay, but do they know how to sign up for a wallet? Do they know really what crypto really is? And I think in 2020, crypto became pretty mainstream. And I think that gave us a lot of conviction.
When our parents started asking about crypto,
that's how you knew. That's how you
like, okay, this is mainstream.
That's how you know. And I think definitely riding off the curtails of crypto.com and some of these big mainstream media buys, Coinbase at the Super Bowl. And so for us, we started seeing that and we said, okay, well, let's do something, but the way we do it has to be done in a way where not only are we educating consumers, it has to be super, super seamless. It's a bit of our secret sauce around how we do it, but if you go on the Drop app and you redeem for crypto, you don't have to sign up for a wallet. You're getting exposure to crypto. It's going, your points are tracking essentially Bitcoin, Ethereum without all that friction. And so, I think our view is that rewards can be an on-ramp for crypto. Rewards could even be an on-ramp for other really interesting, exciting things in the world of Web3. And I'll use quotation marks because I feel like it's still a lot of buzz and a lot of buzz.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of great things happening. There's a lot of cool new business models that are coming out from the Web3 blockchain craze. But then I think there's a lot of companies also, which was really interesting for me when you and I had a conversation a couple months ago about how Drop is adopting crypto, because I could definitely see the use case, right? I see a lot of companies looking to make their use case for crypto, not the other way around. So very, very interesting. So that brings us to NFTs. You guys are jumping in the NFT space now, right?
Yeah, we are. I don't like to use that word. The way we're thinking about it is digital collectibles slash, I think an opportunity to unlock exclusivity, perks, and access to products and experiences in ways that, I think could never have been done before. My last company was also in that world. And so when I saw what was happening, it was like a very big light bulb that went on very quickly. just given what I saw in my last company, which was really, Tunesy, a marketplace for fans to buy experiences from their favorite YouTube stars. And so, and I think what we've seen with crypto, the pickup and the engagement and the interest had to also happen first before we could start dabbling in the world of digital collectibles and using them as a way to drive loyalty to us, to brands, and ways to unlock access in ways that never could have been done before.
So is this the next phase of drop? I have a digital collectible. I'm now able to maybe have a real life experience somewhere. Is that where you're going to be taking this?
It's part of it. I think the way we're thinking about the evolution of the product is, and crypto is, I think, a big aha for us. It's that, hey, we have an opportunity to take rewards to another level. Right now, I think rewards products are very Web 2. So then we start thinking about, what is the next iteration of rewards look like? And I'd say it's probably a culmination of, and when you're seeing what's happening in, again, quote unquote, Web 3, there's a lot of parts of it that we think have real world utility that I think can be applied to rewards. I think part of it is, a more living ecosystem where, points are kind of a currency. So we've already built a currency. And right now, the only way to earn it is through, shopping in the app, surveys, games. What does it look like if that currency in our ecosystem becomes much more open? And so that's part of it. Another part of how we're thinking about it is, okay, what are the elements of NFTs that actually make sense for not just Drop, but all brands? And I think part of it is, loyalty right now is sort of viewed as more of a cost center, if you will, and that's why the budgets are smaller, because it's not viewed as like a profitable revenue generating bucket for a lot of brands and retailers. And I think through evolving it to be through the blockchain and through NFTs, we actually think brands have an opportunity to actually profit. And I think profit from not just the everyday consumer, but their power users, their super fans. And that was something with my last company I saw a lot of. Monetizing the super fans. The super fans, you just saw Coachella. I think someone paid like $250,000 to have like lifetime access. But the other thing that's unique with NFTs that I feel like never was possible is, hey, if like maybe we go to Coachella. Knowing you, I could see you go to Coachella for a long time. But hey, what if you're 5 years into it, you're sick of it, and you can now trade it and sell it, and Coachella doesn't have to worry about facilitating any of that. They just kind of let the free market decide. So I think it's a combination of all these things. And the final thing I'll say is, it just feels different when you can say, I own this thing, I bought this thing. It just feels different. And as a fan of a brand, you just feel much more connected. And I think what's next is, if you can really harness that into a really interesting community and then let the community help drive the brand forward, I think there's something just very powerful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I attended a Bored Ape yacht club party just this past Saturday, and you were supposed to come. Actually, you didn't show up.
I was. Yeah.
But you could definitely see that whole sense of community. Like, hey, there's a very exclusive thing. It's very small. It's very intimate. It's a community actually that's just starting to blossom and come together because it's so fresh and so new. You definitely see like where it could go, and it's like, hey, when my time is up in this community, I should pass it on or sell it to the next person who's going to be jumping in. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I think this is when it becomes mainstream, in a lot of ways. And I think art and music, the first use cases, but we'll start to see a lot more this year. And I think a lot of it will be around loyalty, rewards, and access.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Gen Zs. Our listeners, the listeners of this pod tend to be a little bit older than your consumers. So the listeners of this pod end up being, mostly executives in larger organizations and a little bit gray hair, kind of like mine. What are some key traits you have found out of Gen Zs? Every single brand is trying to figure out Gen Zs. You know, first it was millennials, but what are some key traits what are some insights you can give us on the Gen Z demographic?
Yeah. So here's one. We've around our space, around loyalty and access and points and whatnot. Internally, we still use the word rewards and redemptions a lot, but we're starting to really train our teams and just how we think about our product. We're starting to use the word trade a lot more. And so there's
Okay.
something really interesting around how the Gen Z consumer thinks about the world. And I think like when you think about Robinhood, when you think about
Mhm.
NFTs, why this has gotten super exciting is they view products kind of like a game. And I think they love our focus. It's not Gen Z, but we have a growing Gen Z segment because they love gamification. They love the fact that we're points. They love the way that we're going to be thinking about redemptions is, hey, you're trading your points for crypto. You're trading. So that's been a very interesting
Right.
insight that we've seen around how they think about the world.
What are some things
Yeah.
what are some things around spending habits you see? Like it, every time I read a study on the Gen Z market, they always talk about how they're not traditional consumers the way myself being Gen X or we or Boomers or anybody else have been. They really look at how they buy things in a very different way. What are some things you've noticed that they're doing?
Yeah, I'd say during COVID, especially, a massive rethink of what brands that really resonate with them. And I think a realization that, hey, what really matters to me isn't necessarily a cost saving or a discount or it's much more how personalized is this experience with this brand and how well do they know me. And so I'd say that's why you're seeing a lot of brands jumping in NFTs immediately because around that whole trade and ownership front of how they think about the world. I think they realize that, hey, if we don't start capturing this and be relevant, we might lose out on that whole demographic. So I'd say that's been interesting to watch. I'd say for sure travel is a big theme for us that we're seeing this year. A lot of consumers saving a lot of money during COVID and wanting to deploy that, but wanting to deploy it to travel and potentially take their dream vacation. For the Gen Z, that might mean a very different dream vacation than the boomers, but I think that's definitely something that we're seeing as well on the Gen Z front. I think athleisure here to stay. We saw a lot of retail brands like pick up and then just come back down, but we think brands like Nike, Lululemon, Athleta are here to stay. And I think affordable luxury. And I think the really fascinating thing we're seeing is, hey, could digital luxury become the new type of affordable luxury specifically for this category? And so that's why you're seeing, a lot of brands just jumping in. And I think them realizing it's going to happen, and it might not be via traditional platforms like, now Meta. It might be on
Right.
new platforms like Roblox that have been really good at this demographic.
The pandemic has been tough for a lot of CEOs. I want to get into like some nitty gritty stuff. What were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome? And I mean, for us, we were like, we went up and down, and what you think we're down for the count, and then you start to come back and rebuild. We rebuilt our organization the right way. What were some of the things that you had to go through?
I'd say the hardest thing was there was no playbook, and navigating a lot of really challenging things. Even beyond COVID, in a world that I'd say was moving very, 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 very fast, faster than ever before.
Hmm.
And that could have been good, and that could have been bad. And knowing which things to react quickly to, and which things to not react so quickly to, and wait for things, the dust to settle a bit before you react. So, for example, I remember early days, and this was like pretty nuts. As a board, we got together and we just had no idea how to forecast like what 2020 would look like. One of the assumptions that we considered baking into the forecast is a world where even e-commerce shuts down. And I remember saying there, like, there's no playbook. Like, how do you bake that? How do you forecast that? Like,
yeah.
and for
Well,
how long?
I mean, those are the extremes, right? Like the extreme is there's no e-commerce, and then there's only e-commerce, and
So exactly. And I'd say
you have to figure it out. Yeah.
the other challenge is then, challenge but opportunity is then saying, okay, we just don't know what we don't know. Let's be scrappy now and tweak our forecast and be very careful around how we spend money and hire and kind of earn until there's more clarity. Like that is plan A. And so I think it's a challenge to grow and give off the mindset that we are growing, and we definitely did grow throughout, because e-commerce, as you probably know, continued to it's an upward trajectory. Consumers want to save more money. They're sitting on more money. There's a lot of pent up money, and a lot of brands wanted to move their money outside of big tech platforms as of late, especially. So we've seen a lot of good tailwinds, but it's like just making the tough calls early because you just don't know what you don't know. And I think managing that, and then managing yourself, I find that as a founder, there's a lot of different stakeholders you have to manage, but I think a lot of times founders forget that the most important is first yourself. As they say, there's a reason why they say put on your oxygen mask on yourself first. If you're not good, then how do you translate that positivity and energy to others if you don't exude it yourself? So I think for me, early COVID, I for example found a lot of really good refuge in Vancouver and in Whistler, and just needed to get away. But that was my way to put the oxygen mask on myself first, because I found that traveling was what gave me a lot of energy. And so it was hard to replicate that when you're by yourself.
I remember you and I went for dinner. You and I went for dinner with a very good mutual friend. Shout out to Danny. But you, Danny, and I and your brother went for dinner, and you were like, "This is the first time I've actually been out of the house." I was like, "Dude, you've been locked up," and like, it's one of those things where we gotta always check on each other. Like we gotta be okay ourselves. Only then we can go and solve these big problems. And I'm glad to hear you say that too. I talk a lot about it. It's tough if we can't take care of ourselves. How are we gonna move forward? So yeah, absolutely. Like, you make sure your health and your mind is good, and then only then you can go and support others, right? But speaking on that, one of the challenges I'm finding, and especially in this remote world, is culture. I know you're a huge culture guy in your organization. You've always have been in really big on culture. How are you finding being able to, replicate that culture that we used to have in the office, but now doing it in an online way, and now trying to do it over Zoom, and you're not really having, those shoulder tap conversations where you're feeding off each other's energy? How are you finding to keep everybody at drop motivated, and how are you maintaining the culture of your company's values through through this new online medium?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a bit of a cliche, somewhat generic answer, but I'll go a bit more in depth on, for us, what it means. But I think the answer is it depends on the company, and there's going to be a new normal, and the new normal is going to be different. And I think every company is going to be very different. For us, our big vision is around personalized rewards, and so especially for us, we had to personalize the culture to what really made sense for our employees. Our company values being passion, humility, grit, hustle. And transparency, although not a value, has been always very important to us. And so we came to the answer around, like, we want in person, but hey, myself included, there are situations and examples of times when I'm actually much, much more productive at home. And usually it's times when you're like needing to crank out emails or certain types of meetings. So I think for us, we think that's going to be the new normal. And so we've tried to really foster culture based on that. I think, and something I've been really, we felt earlier throughout COVID, it kind of swung a bunch, is it's very hard to replicate team building and social interaction and all that stuff over Zoom. And so we now, as much as we can, try to have Zoom still be the day-to-day work-related conversation. Anytime you're in person, make that more about collaboration and connection and trust building.
Sure.
And I think the third thing that I'll say is I was very clear, and we were very clear at the executive level, that there's just no playbook. And I think being just honest and transparent, I think really helped especially early days, show the company that, you know, and it's that humility. And I think that really helped us, because I don't think anyone knew. And I think a lot of what you saw out there, though, like big companies like Shopify coming out and saying this, like, you know, people don't realize that, you know, there was a mass exodus because sure, like, you know, X percentage of the companies, you know, may have wanted that, but then another chunk maybe didn't. And so, you know, totally get it though. Bigger companies very different, and they just had to take a stance. What's worked really well for us is just being open that there's no playbook, and we're gonna personalize something for, you know, our employees.
100%, 100%. We did the same thing. I mean, our leadership team and myself just said, why don't we just be open, transparent, and vulnerable, and just let everyone know we don't know what we're doing either. Let's make this the best place to work at, not because I'm prescribing it to you, it's because it's going to take all of us to go and do it. So we all gotta put our 2 cents in and do what we think is going to work to make this the best place for everybody, as long as it aligns with, again, I said, let's align it to our company values. Let's not forget what our company values are. And so everything we do in our day-to-day, let's make sure it aligns to what our value system is. And it's worked out pretty well, man. And, you know, I still have colleagues I can't believe I haven't ever met in person, but like, hoping to end that soon. And, you know, I think offsites are going to be pretty epic moving forward.
Yeah. We haven't yet done an off-site. Teams have done their own, but we haven't yet done a company-wide. And I think, you know, super excited, but to kind of our point, you know, those should be now much more focused on collaboration, team building, trust building than ever before. Just given, you know, you're not seeing people in person as much.
Everyone go break bread with each other, so that when you're talking over Slack, you actually, it's more humanized. You know, it's like, hey, I just had dinner with Derrick. I'm not going to ignore him. Let me get back to him in a timely manner, right? Like, and I think that goes a long way. I mean, that kind of team building is definitely needed. And I know we're seeing it in our organization. You know, I'm getting requests often now to say, hey, Sheetal, can we get some office space somewhere to go? We want to go and do an offsite thing here and there. And so we're figuring it out. But again, it's at the same time, you also want to be safe and respectful to those who don't wish to join right now. And that puts you in a tough position, right? Like, you don't want to be the one left out. And so it's definitely a balancing act that I think a lot of us are figuring out in our organizations. But where we go from here, I'm hoping we're coming on the other end of this pandemic where we could come out of it. And then go from there. So I got a question for you. You've been spending some time here in Miami. I know you've been spending some time all over the place. Totally off the cuff. What are you doing? Are you staying in Toronto? Are you moving? What's going on? Are you doing what I did? You picking up and leaving?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I'd say the way I'm thinking about it is, you know, we'll do what's best for, you know, back to the oxygen mask analogy. If I'm feeling good, then I'll be even better, you know, equipped to make sure the company's in a good spot. And I think for me, I've realized I love I just need stimuli, and that could mean, you know, it could be many things. It could be traveling, and that's a small part of it. You know, meeting other founders in person is part of it. And so that's part of, you know, what's important to me. I'd say I've done I think every winter, either in Toronto. I think I did one winter in New York, and I just realized, hey, you know, I think there's something great about being able to wake up and, you know, it's sunny. Because for me, I think that's been great, especially being locked down just by myself in Toronto. So I think that's going to be part of how I think about the future and how I spend my time. Toronto will always be home. You know, our East Coast headquarters will always be Toronto. I think all those things are important. I think board meetings, you know, we've done remote. You know, do they ever have to be in person anymore? You know, so I think that's going to help drive some of the thinking. But I will say, we are, you know, growing and we're scaling, and I think there's that time it takes to build trust with a new hire, and especially someone I'll be working with closely. You know, hard to do over Zoom, and you know, we learned a lot of that during COVID. Sure. And so, what are some of those key people and key functions I want to be close to, and just making sure I have, you know, enough face time with them in real life. But yeah, I mean, a lot of moving pieces, still trying to figure it out.
Well, I like it. I mean, you're doing the right thing, right? You're moving around, you're testing, you're going to figure out what works best for you. and then go from there. I mean, Toronto's still going to be home for me. It's where I was born and raised, and I still want to go back there as much as I can to go see friends, family, and the tribe. I mean, we still got majority of our workforce there. But yeah, I'm kind of like you. I'm just bouncing around right now, going back and forth and trying to figure it out. I've done a little bit more permanently than you here, but it's again, I'm going to do what's right for not only for the company but for myself. And like I think that's something and it's weird because I'm here. It's not a conversation we used to have before the pandemic with founders. It's where we're all asking each other, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay where you are? Where are you going? What's going on? I think if the pandemic has done anything, it's brought us a little bit more freedom to go bounce around and do things like this, since we're not chained to our desk in one location.
Yeah, and I think maybe part of it is more of these types of podcast interviews, because I feel like it's there's ways to have these become sort of the informal or indirect cooler talks, and we're talking about culture. And I think I've definitely talked about culture internally, but I feel like I think now we all have to be more conscious around formally laying out time slots and at all hands and whatnot to talk about these things. But in the past, I could just be casually talking about it at the office, and people just like through osmosis, hear about it. So maybe I got to do more of these and just share it as well internally with our team members.
Yeah, I started doing. Here's a trip, a little trick for you. I started doing lunch and learns, where I'm just going to start doing fireside chats. Like if I have a really good one-on-one with somebody in the company, I'm like, that was a really good one-on-one. Do you mind getting more questions from everybody at the tribe, and let's go and do a lunch and learn where you and I just have a fireside chat? We just started saying, hey, let's get this. So we got one scheduled coming up, I think, in 2 weeks, where we're going to start doing more of that. But that's exactly it. You don't get that water cooler talk where through osmosis you're hearing everything that's going on in the company.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and we've been doing the same. I find that at the beginning of the pandemic, especially, it just became very much like speaking to the company, if that makes sense, versus like collaborating with the company. You're kind of, and it's because it's Zoom, it's very hard to have multi-threaded conversations. And I think that's where fireside chats for us even have been really, really good. And so we try to do more of those as well.
So what are some tips? What are some tips for people listening, or if they want to be working that drop, or not even if they want to work that drop? Let me rephrase this. What are some tips you want to give people who are working in the tech community right now in this new remote world on how they should go above and beyond and exceed expectations? We always have these awesome, smart people who come in and want to be go-getters. And one of the challenges that I'm hearing a lot, even from our own staff, is like, how do I get that recognition? Like, if I am going above and beyond, how does it matter now? How is that shown? What are some tips and advice you got for people who are working with us to actually really make a mark and make a stamp in where they want to go in their career?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one tip is over communicate. I think I find that in the past, in an in-person world, someone's giving you an update on something, someone is talking a bit about their work. It's harder to like really sink in over Zoom, but two, you're just not hearing it as much generally. So I think it's like making sure you recognize that, and you're, communicating more than you would have, but you're doing it, the right way. I think that over Zoom, context, it's harder for context to kind of come into the picture, and like body
especially
language.
Especially in Slack, like you write a sentence, people can take it so many different ways. So you got to be really conscious about like, what am I saying out there? What am I putting out there? And making sure you're putting it in the right context.
So many different ways. And something, and another kind of hack or, a word of advice is for me personally, I've actually been using voice notes more because of that. And so using voice notes in a asynchronous way to delegate. So that's worked really well for me, because I do find Zoom fatigue is real. Being back to back is painful, and some of those meetings don't even have to be meetings, and you don't have to stress about going to the meeting versus just setting a voice note when you feel like setting a voice note. So that's worked really well. And the final thing I'd say is I've just started doing it. I was sort of doing it without knowing I don't know if I'm curious if you've done it, but there's a way on Google Calendar to set your default meeting time. So I've actually set my default meeting time at 25 minutes, and it automatically sets your default instead of 60 minutes to 50. And so for internal meetings, external is a bit different, but Mondays I have like one-on-ones, and they're actually now all 50 minutes. So it gives me 10 minutes to contact switch, and that's night and day difference for me personally. Yeah.
It's a great idea. I kind of say it all the time. I said we get bonus points if we have an hour meeting schedule. I go, we get bonus points if we like finish this off in 45. Like let's get to the chase. The other thing I started doing also is I think over communication. I say over communicate, but then everybody wants to be on every Zoom, and I'm like, if you're not really adding that value right now, like how can we restructure this meeting so that you come in to get what you need out of it and you get out? And so every time I'm in a meeting now, I'm like, how am I wasting everyone else's time right now? And what am I gonna do to like really optimize the people that are needed to be in for what they need out of those meetings? And I think that's something that's going to be iterative, that's going to continue going on. I don't know if I'm ever going to perfect it, and I don't think I will, but it's definitely getting better than what we were doing before. One of the other things that, I had one of our engineers come up to me and have a conversation about was starting to just write summaries of like their thoughts, and like, here is what I was working on this month, here's what my thoughts are, and here's where I want to go next month. And they started doing that in one-on-ones with their manager, and then they started like just sharing it with me. And I was like, this is some of the most insightful things I've ever seen. And so I'm going to say it out there for the listeners. It's okay to be a humble brag and be like, hey, look, it's okay to have an opinion of saying, here's where I did well. And even if it's so transparent, it's like some of the emails are, here's where I didn't even do well, here's where I was effing up. And I'm like, that's awesome that you recognize that. And here's what you're going to do for the next month. And, and you don't have to share it, I guess, with the CEO, but at least sharing that with your manager or even your team. It's okay to do that, because that's a good way of over communicating. You're not wasting anybody's time, and you're letting people know this is what's going on. And so you get good insights coming back to you from your team saying, hey, how can I help? How can I help you succeed?
I think so. I think it's harder to track anything in a remote world. So just over communication through something as simple as what you just said, I think goes a long way.
And it's point form too. It's really rough, but it's so awesome to see. It's like I feel like it's Christmas at the end of the month when I get it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Derrick, we got a couple minutes left here. How do you want to end off, man?
Why don't we do this? We'll do rapid fire. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you're gonna give a quick answer, one word answer, and then you're gonna ask me 3 questions.
All right. Now I got to think of questions while I'm answering, but go for it.
Does that gonna work? Okay.
I think I can do it.
Okay.
I'm willing to try live. Let's go make this happen.
Bitcoin price end of year.
45,000.
Dream destination you want to travel to this year, if you could take some time off and travel to?
South coast of Italy.
Favorite app you're using these days that people don't know much about?
Oh, good one. Dude, I can't even think of it right now. Hold on.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah. Well, let me just scroll through. You know what? It's going to go right to your crypto answer. It's Gemini.
Gemini. Nice.
Yeah.
Crypto.
Crypto.
I guess my turn to answer your questions now, I guess.
All right.
If you have them.
I got them. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading? Kings of Crypto. Actually, I can't believe we're both deep in crypto. Kings of Crypto talks about upbringing of Coinbase and how it all kind of happened.
Yeah. All right. The next question: where's your next destination? Where are you headed to next?
Back to Toronto. Okay. Yeah. We have a board meeting coming up, and gonna try to do it in Toronto with the team. Back to -20. I'm not excited for that, but back to Toronto.
Headcount will drop at the end of the year.
180.
All right, you got a lot of hiring to do, man. Derrick, this has been a ton of fun, man. I really appreciate it. You know, I'd love to have you back on in a couple months again, and let's catch up and see where we've gone from here. We're gonna have a whole bunch of other challenges that we can go and talk about and try to figure out how to solve. Thanks for
You know where
coming
to
on,
find
man.
me. Thanks for having me.
All right, bro.
All right, see you, Sheetal. All right.